Here's a koan. This is case 76 from Dogen's collection. Dagui was once asked by a monastic, "What is the way?" This is the basic question. Dagui said, "No mind is the way." The monastic said, "I don't understand it." Dagui said, "It's good to understand not understanding." The monastic asked, "What is not understanding?" Dagui said, "It's just that you are not anyone else." I don't think all koans have that great punchline, though I think we imagine that they do, that there's this twist, the turning word. Often it's not necessarily that they end with a whimper, but they don't end with a bang. And this one ends with, for me, something that's pretty mind-stopping. We're asking about no mind. We're asking about understanding and not understanding. And at the end, the teacher says, "It's just that you're not anyone else." Which makes me go back to the front and start reading it again and reading it again and reading it again. I think, what did I miss? This is, I think some koans are more open to interpretation than others. I have no doubt that there are many reads of this conversation, many understandings of this conversation. But I'll share a little bit about what it brings up for me when I read it, because I feel like it touches on something not just profound, but profoundly difficult in the practice. And maybe I'll start by pointing out that, of course, there are lots of ways to categorize things. We could say that Zen has, has two of these or two of these, but one way to do that, one way to split Zen down the middle and to split at least Mahayana Buddhism down the middle, is to say that there are a lot of teachings that aim directly at the idea of interdependence, of inseparability, where the punchline or the underlying message is that you and I are not separate, right? That the I is the delusion, and that connection is something more real. Oneness is something more real, and that the task of this moment and every moment is to look at someone else not as someone else, but as something more intimate. And then there's another side of Zen teachings that really hammers home that we are alone, that we are profoundly alone in what we are doing. Kodo Sawaki famously said that no one can so much as fart for another person. That no one can take up this task for you. No one's understanding can be your understanding, and that we are born alone and we die alone. We have these two sides, and this koan is speaking from the latter. It's speaking to that sense of aloneness. Dagui says, it's just that you are not anyone else. So what happens here? It starts in the most classic way. And if I were more of a scholar, or if I were just more patient, I would find you all the koans that start with some variation of what is the way, what is the path, what is the Buddha Dharma. It's not a softball at all. but it's a question that the teacher might see coming. It has a flavor of, for me at least, that maybe the novice is so much of a novice that he hasn't even found the more distinct question. But he knows this is always a good question. So he's going to ask this question. This is how he's going to create this encounter with the teacher. So he says, what is the way? And Dagui says something that's also not that creative. He says, no mind is the way. No mind, mushin. Variations of that response come up a lot. And the monastic, to his credit, doesn't try to roll with it. He just says, yeah, I don't understand that. And then it pivots. And Dagui says, it's good to understand not understanding. And the monk follows and says, what is not understanding? And then he says, it's just that you're not anyone else. So we have all these keywords. We have no mind. What is no mind? And we have not understanding, which is an echo of not knowing. We talk about not knowing a lot. Bodhidharma talked about not knowing. Everyone since Bodhidharma has talked about not knowing. What does it mean to not know? And here, right here, I could start talking and I could start trying to describe my understanding of no mind. And I said, well, it's like this. And here's how this person describes it. Or I could say it's the opposite of this. Or we could talk about not knowing, and you know I have. And I have, how many hours have I given to trying to make up some explanation so that we can understand not knowing? But I read this and I feel this teacher is slapping me in the face for all of them. And what it brings to mind for me is this phrase that I heard. I don't even know the first time I encountered it, but I've heard it many times since. And this too, it stopped my mind maybe 20 years ago, maybe more. And it was this. It said, enlightenment is not like something. Enlightenment is not like something. Enlightenment, and we could use other words for it other than enlightenment. We could say it's Buddha nature. We could say it's Zazen. We could use other ways of getting to the same place. But that when I start trying to describe enlightenment by analogy, saying it's kind of like this, I just make it small. Not just actually small and reductive, but if we imagine that for a moment you were close to it, at the beginning of the conversation you were close to it, in your perspective, I make it far away. It becomes more concrete and less available the more that I say, it's kind of like this. Because this experience that is supposed to be yours, that is supposed to be immediate, that is supposed to be okay without my explanation of it, now has shape. And not only does it have a shape, it has my shape. So that when you go looking for it now, you aren't looking for the actual thing, you're looking for the thing that I described. There's the impact on me, which is that the more I talk about it, the more I shrink it down to something that's portable and safe and easy. But also there's an audience here. And I'm doing the same thing for the audience. With every word, I'm taking something away. Enlightenment is not like something. That's what I hear when I hear Dagui say, it's just that you are not anyone else. What if in this moment, you can only make sense of this moment as you, not drawing on something else, not drawing on the words of someone else. What is it to be in the immediacy of you right now? Without any scaffolding at all that you've taken from someone else. Not understanding in that context is not resting in an idea of who you are to such a profound degree that you cannot rest in your understanding of what that is, or what that is, or what this means. It's presence without the next step of trying to categorize it and make sense of it and shrink it down into a story that feels digestible. In other words, not understanding is allowing yourself to not understand without taking that next step of trying to understand. It's so foreign. We do this all the time. We do this all the time. Again, if we were talking in the study group a couple weeks ago about the nidanas. Now, classical Buddhism has such a beautiful understanding of how the mind works, of how an encounter becomes a feeling, which becomes a name, which becomes an opinion, which becomes a story in microseconds, over and over and over again. Zen always has tried to point to something early in that process. Bodhidharma describes it as a transmission beyond letters, beyond words and letters. And we can hear beyond, and we can imagine that it's some transcendent thing. But we could also experience this as simply without words and letters. What is it to just stop where you are and let things be as they are? What I love about this is that for me, it speaks to the, yes, that's a profound experience, but it isn't necessarily an experience of clarity. It isn't necessarily an experience of, oh, now I get it because I'm being so present. It's to be present in this way, in this total way, is almost the opposite. It's to not get it and to be there fully in the not getting it, to be in the mystery, but without a fight and without clinging to the next part. I've used this example over and over, but it's looking out at the ocean and just being in the wow. What is not understanding? It's just that you are not anyone else. You're this. You're alone. And the things that you hold on to make sense of the world, you might not need them right now. You might have a capacity greater than you know to let these things go, even for just an instant, and see what's there. And that's where I'll stop.